I explained it to them. It's the tides, man. They can either work for you or they can work against you. Hey!
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we're going to be talking about the Triple-A Norfolk Tides, who play in Norfolk, Virginia. Later on in this episode, I'm going to be speaking with nature interpreter Sarah Peterson, who can tell us all about tides and seahorses and the Norfolk ecology. And of course, Dan Simon is going to be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so pleased to have the general manager of the Norfolk Tides on Baseball by Design, Joe Gregory. Joe, good morning. How are you doing?
Great, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, I'm excited to speak about the Norfolk Tides. At the time of this recording, I have not yet been to a Tides game, but it will be my first minor league baseball game of the season. Will be opening day. This episode will drop after that, of course, but I'm very excited to get to the ballpark. We were just chatting before we started the recording here. I lived in Richmond for about 10 years. Richmond's a couple hours away. It's inland from Norfolk. You all are right there on the ocean. I'm going to ask you a really basic, really obvious question. Why are you called the Norfolk Tides?
It goes back to I guess 1961, when before we were Norfolk, we were Tidewater. And they had a contest in the local newspaper, and the guy running the newspaper pretty much didn't listen to anyone's entries for the name the team contest, and he just liked the alliteration of Tidewater Tides. And obviously, as you mentioned, we are near the ocean. We're on the stadium's on the Elizabeth River, which feeds into the Chesapeake Bay. So we are surrounded by water here. So it's the nautical Navy life here just makes sense. That'd be the Norfolk Tides.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you guys are right there on the ocean. But there's a lot going on in Norfolk, obviously. It's a military town. It's not that far from Virginia Beach. I mean, it's all part of this sort of larger. You said Tidewater. Can you explain for the uninitiated what Tidewater is?
It's funny. They've had so many different names for the region here. It was Tidewater. Hampton Roads is another regional name. Recently, they've been pushing coastal Virginia. But, you mentioned Virginia Beach. I live in Virginia Beach. It's literally next door to Norfolk. They kind of refer to the seven cities here, which would be Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Suffolk, Chesapeake, Newport News, Hampton. Kind of that goes to the other side of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. If you've been here, they talk about if you're on the south side, you're in that Norfolk, Virginia Beach side. If you're on the peninsula, it's Hampton Road or Newport News. Then you start getting into Williamsburg, Yorktown, Jamestown area. So it kind of sprawls there until you start hitting the suburbs and into Richmond. But yeah, it's the seven cities kind of overall overarching name has been that Tidewater, Hampton Roads, coastal Virginia.
So you've been, we also, again, we were chatting before we got going here. You've been with the team since 2011. The team has undergone a major shift in its branding, about as big a change as you could go through in branding, and you were there for that. The Tides had a brand that was pretty simple. It was largely text based. Had the letter T with a wave, and that the wave was sort of the cross stroke of the letter T. That was the extent of this brand. It was very simple. There were not a lot of ancillary marks, that sort of thing. Replaced in 2015 with a brand that has a lot of alternates. It's based on I'm going to say Poseidon seahorse. Could be a Neptune seahorse,
Yeah, in
I guess.
Virginia Beach, it's Neptune.
All right, if it's Virginia Beach, it's Neptune. That's right, because that's the statue there in Virginia Beach is the Neptune statue. So, okay, so it's Neptune. And also, there's a lot of the letter N here for Norfolk. You've got that at the end of the trident here. So before we get into the sort of specifics of that logo, you as general manager oversaw before the 2015 season a major shift in the overall identity of the team. What was your thinking going into that process, making such a big change to the branding of the team?
It was, you mentioned it was simple, it was classic, and I felt like we were handcuffed in a lot of the usage of the logo. I mean, like you said, it was text based, and I feel like it wasn't balanced very well. Like it was kind of on a slant, and it was tough, on just merchandise. And really, I feel we were had our hands tied with different capabilities. So, and the other part of it is how do you draw a tide? I know
Mm.
they had a wave in there, but like a wave isn't the tide, and it's like drawing the heat. Like it's a fire isn't heat. So we wanted to introduce some characters and actually, have a mascot and, bring it, I feel like, to life, give it some depth more than just text. And, Brandios came out and I feel like they did a great job helping us take it to that next level.
So I hope it's okay for me to say this, but I felt like that previous brand always looked like it belonged on a tube of toothpaste. It looks a little bit like a toothpaste ad to me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I could see that.
this so the new brand, the that old brand, not only was it limited, I think, in terms of it was text based and didn't give you a lot of ancillary marks to work with, but it was the color palette was blue and another blue, and so there wasn't really a wide range of colors to work with. Obviously, coming into this new brand, you've got the warm color and the cool color, but you also have the black and the gray. There are a lot of different themes going on here, right? Like you've got as we mentioned, there's a seahorse, but an angry looking seahorse, right? He's sort of a menacing seahorse. He is a Neptune seahorse. He's got the Neptune trident there. But then there are themes related to the military, and there's sort of a metallic gray and metal. There are some secondary marks that have like an anchor theme to them. So different ideas, different themes, different stories that are being told here. As general manager, what are the stories that stand out most to you? What are the things that are the most essential parts of this brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of them. I think a big one was you mentioned earlier we were blue and blue. We were also a Mets affiliate for 36 years. So that had the blue element to it. Our old jersey numbers on our home jerseys were red, kind of like the Dodgers. And that's because the GM that was here for 50 years before me grew up in LA and grew up a Dodgers fan. So, um, didn't really have a reason to be that way. So, and I give credit to Dave Rosenfield. He piloted the ship here for over 50 years as GM, and I wouldn't be here without him. So, but he was very old school. And as
Yeah.
we were looking to take it to that next level, you mentioned the military and the grays, and that is such a big part of the area here. It's the largest Navy base in the world. We've got more aircraft carriers in Norfolk than any other country has. So we wanted to involve the battleship grays in there. Another big thing was getting the orange in there because we were or still are an Orioles affiliate. As guys are coming down from the big leagues and they've got orange batting gloves and cleats, and wanted just to have a touch of orange in there. We were getting away from the blues, but still wanted to represent the sea life here. So that's where the greens came in and like the jade color to capture some of the sea life and life along the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And then the seahorse was something that does live locally that other teams didn't really take advantage of, that we were able to kind of stake our claim on. You mentioned holding the trident. The original version was just a regular trident, and we fashioned it to have that N at the end of it. But Neptune is big with the Virginia Beach community, and so I feel like we were hitting a lot of buttons and trying to encompass a lot into this, and it even like bled over into like our kids club theme had a starfish for the kids club that Brandios did, and there are little ancillary guys we used in other areas. At one point we were looking at a merman, and that was a what if jersey we did because at one point we were going down the road with the merman. So for it being my first rebrand and working with Brandios, I feel like we really had a lot of elements that we were able to squeeze in.
Well, the Mermen you couldn't do obviously because they play in Myrtle Beach. So
I think we were first. I think we were before that iteration. But yeah, you're very right.
That is, I'd actually love to see the Pelicans do more with the fact that Eastbound and Down was set in Myrtle Beach. That would be fun. You mentioned the Orioles, and it used to be, I think, more the case than it is now. But the other Orioles affiliates work orange into their brands, the Shorebirds, the Ironbirds, and the Bay Sox, the now Chesapeake Bay Sox. You all are the only Orioles affiliate not in Maryland, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because Delmarva, they're there on the p peninsula, but I think they're in the Maryland portion of the Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia peninsula. And there's certainly been some changes with the branding there, especially in Chesapeake. They have that fun new brand and the state flag of Maryland in that brand because that's the law if you play a sport in Maryland.
Yeah, we've looked at it trying to incorporate the state of Virginia flag in some of our stuff, but the Virginia flag is basically a murder scene if you look at it. A guy getting speared. So we tried, but yeah, Maryland loves their state flag.
Yeah. Well, I live in Colorado where we love our state flag too. So I know how that goes. I grew up in Pennsylvania and I couldn't tell you what the state flag looks like there. So there are some states love them and some states, it's a non-factor. Well, obviously with a big change like this, I'm sure there was a lot of reaction. It's been a decade since then. What was that initial reaction? How was it embraced? And then what do you feel has endured since then? Like what are the marks or the stories that have endured since then? And is there anything that was sort of part of that initial rebrand that you've sort of, gone away from and haven't used as much?
The initial reaction was a lot of hatred.
Oh boy.
It's the first Christmas party we had. One of the people on staff here gave me a certificate it was a comment that someone said I was the worst person in professional sports. So a lot of pushback, but sales wise, it off the charts. It's funny, we still haven't peaked. Like last year was our biggest merchandise year ever, and we're 10 years later.
Yeah.
So it's still growing. I think the one thing we're getting away from a little bit is the orange. I feel like if you look at our on field for this season, a lot of the orange stroke that was around everything is going away. And so like the seahorse this year, the stroke's gonna be that jade color instead of the orange. We're replacing our orange jerseys with a black jersey. So there's some things like that where the fans didn't really embrace the orange merchandise as much as they do the other colors. So that's one thing that, we're still keeping the orange, but it's not as prominent as it was before. And the orange didn't really fit in as much with the Navy theme or the sea life theme. So I feel like that's one thing that may have run its course. But I think the other big thing we've done is we were slow to adopt the alternate identities. And I feel like we've gotten very big into the alternate identities, and over the years, we've really grown that. And the amount of jerseys we have and hats we have, if you would have told me 10 years ago this is where we would have been, I'd called you crazy.
Well, obviously, at the time of this recording, we've had a lot of the Copa de la Diversión brands have been out, and you have a seahorse themed Copa brand, which is really cool. What are the other alternates that you're finding are popular with your fans?
Last year we did Special Forces one. There's Special Warfare because we're based here where the Navy SEALs are. So all the East Coast Navy SEAL teams are in Virginia Beach, Norfolk. So we did a black on black Navy SEAL inspired Special Warfare identity. That was very popular, and we got a lot of buy-in from Navy SEALs, active duty and retired, that actually helped us with that design. We did a salute to Norfolk version with ORF on the front, which is our airport code. There's a mace on the hat that goes back to colonial times when the mace was given to the city of Norfolk from the King of England. So that was a very popular one. And we've done some food identities. We were the Squeezers based on the drink, the Orange Crush. We couldn't do Orange Crush because of trademark issues, but we did that. We did the Norfolk Coffee because so much coffee is roasted in Norfolk because we're such a big port that all the coffee comes in Norfolk, gets roasted here and then distributed, across the country. So there's, we've had a lot over the years, but most recently that Navy SEAL one was probably the most successful.
I was going to ask you about the coffees one, so I was glad you brought that up. So I'm looking forward to trying out that Norfolk coffee. But again, I'm going to be at the team store and I'm going to be hitting it pretty hard. I love a green hat. I have a certain number of green hats in my collection behind me here. So the green hat with the seahorse on the front is the one that I'm targeting, and I'm a dad hat guy, so I'll be looking for that 47 brand or the what is it, the 2950. I don't know what the brands are, but
We got you covered.
oh, I have no doubt. I was looking at your team store before we hopped on this conversation. I'm drawn to that seahorse logo. One of the things I have found with minor league baseball logos is that an endearing animal will carry you a long way, right? Like you look at I mean, I go way back, right? Like the Brevard County manatees were one of my favorites, right? Like a really endearing animal. The Rome Emperors had immediate success with their rebrand with a penguin character. So an endearing animal, I think, is going to, like I said, carry you a long way. The seahorse, I think, is something that people are sort of drawn to, right? Like it's this sort of delicate little animal that like you when you look at it, you're wondering like how does it even get around with that little tiny dorsal fin? And then, you've recharacterized it as the Roman god of the sea here, right? Like with his trident. And I said Poseidon earlier on, and I guess I should clarify because you mentioned Virginia Beach. There's a statue of Neptune, the Roman god of the sea. Poseidon is the Greek god of the sea. So that's there's a they could be interchangeable depending on how you approach that. But anyway, back to the question: the seahorse as an animal, this delicate little animal that you've recharacterized in this sort of fierce way, is a fun inversion, right, of expectations. And so for people who like the animal or people who like the sort of strength of the mascot, there's a lot going on there. With all of that, my question is, can you sort of talk about that decision to make this delicate little animal this fierce, strong creature?
Yeah, I think yeah, I don't even know how much I thought about it until just now as you bring it up, but you talk about um, you know, unique mascots over the years. I started in the New York Penn League with Mahoning Valley, 20 years ago. And when I first got into minor league baseball, I was drawn to Everett's logo, the Aqua Sox. And I don't know if that's subliminally where I got my inspiration, but that little tree frog
Yeah,
wasn't necessarily fierce, but I always just thought that was, 20 years ago was a great mascot.
yeah.
And as I think about it, I went to Youngstown State for college, and Youngstown State's the Penguins,
Oh,
and they're the only university with a penguin. Obviously, Pittsburgh has it for hockey, but again, something not necessarily fierce but unique. So when we were doing the rebrand, so many minor league teams, especially at the time, had some version of red, white, or blue. So many of the teams had red or blue. Like, and I don't feel like there were a lot of green ones at the time. So going along those lines with the seahorse, with the color palette, we wanted to be, something unique, something that was going to stand out, something identifiable. We wanted, to show, homage to the Navy, but we didn't want to, the hockey team in town has a battleship on their logo, and we didn't want to go too much in that direction. So we definitely wanted something proprietary that was our own, and I feel like Brandeis did a great job helping us achieve that.
yeah. Well, obviously, Brandeis does great work, and they do such a good job with a primary logo, and then breaking that out into the sort of smaller narratives that tell one larger story. So as you said, there's a lot going on here, a lot of storylines. The Daytona Tortugas is another one. How did I forget that? That's another like sort of gregarious animal that people love that becomes a sports logo. So, well, Joe, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you taking time to talk about this brand. I know there's so much else we could be talking about. You've got a lot of fun alternates and whatnot. I look forward to exploring all of that in your team store on opening night later on this month, next week. In the meantime, where can folks find you online and on social media? Where can folks find the team?
The team, NorfolkTides.com. We're on all the socials and easy to find out there. Chances are people were following us for Jackson Holiday information, so that hopefully A lot of people are already here, and then I'm usually Joe Gregory 51. 51 was my number for my high school football days. But if you're looking for me, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I don't know if I'm that interesting of a follow, but always like to connect with people when we're talking baseball or sports in general.
Do you have, if that was your number, do you have a lot of Las Vegas 51s gear?
You know what? I don't have a lot of gear, but fortunate to have gone to some of their games lately, and they do a hell of a job out there.
Yeah, the new the Aviators brand out there, and I love that old 51s brand, but that new ballpark and the Triple-A championship game out there, all that is a lot of fun. So anyway, that's a whole other story. Joe, thank you so much. This has been fun. Hey, and I'll see you in 8 days. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and be happy to show you around and maybe give you some first glimpses at some new merch we haven't unveiled yet.
Oh, that's exciting. Ooh, I like it. All right, Joe, thanks so much. I'll see you soon.
All right, take care, Paul.
All right, I'm back. Guess what? It's opening day, and it's in Norfolk. Joe, we're here, as we said we would be. Thanks so much for having us, man. Congrats on opening day.
Thanks for being here. I always love having new guests come to Harbor Park, and thanks for bringing the weather with you.
We are having some of the best weather you could possibly imagine for opening day here in Norfolk, Virginia. Opening day, it's late March, the baseball season's underway. Couldn't be happier. I know we just had a whole conversation, so we don't need to redo all of this, but I'm just thrilled to be here, thrilled the baseball season's going on. Love the super green shirt you got on right now, man. That is awesome. So Joe, we've already said our goodbyes, so we'll just say it again, live from the ballpark. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here.
All right, it is opening night in Norfolk, Virginia. I am at the game with Sarah Peterson, who is a naturalist who has lived and worked in Norfolk for many years.
About 6 years now.
6 years now. Sarah Peterson. That voice you hear is naturalist, interpreter Sarah Peterson. And Sarah, we have seen a lot of stuff the last couple of days.
We have seen a lot of the really great sights in this area.
We are here on a work trip together. That was a very quick out right there in the bottom of the seventh.
Right fielder.
But one of the running themes through the last couple of days of things that we've seen. We've been to the zoo. We've been to the aquarium. We've been to historical sites. We've been to natural sites. One of the things that I would say that we have seen is the water.
Yes.
Why is water so important here?
Yes, so Norfolk is on the Chesapeake Bay, the Elizabeth River, the James River dumps out somewhere near here. A lot of major waterways all seem to find their way. I mean, it's the end of a watershed right here at the ocean, so everything sort of finds its way here.
What does that mean, the end of a watershed?
So a watershed is where all of the water that falls in the form of rain in a watershed, it will all eventually dump out somewhere else. So the Chesapeake Bay is a major watershed. I think it goes all the way up to Pennsylvania, and all the rain that falls on a certain part of Pennsylvania will eventually make its way to the Chesapeake Bay.
We just had
as well as everything on the way.
That was a drop third strike and safe at first base there. So that's hope for the Tides right now in an 8-1 ball game against your Durham Bulls. So the team, obviously the nickname for this team is the Tides.
The Tides.
That has something to do with water.
Yes, there's water. We can see it from our seats. It's a little dark now, but there's water right outside the stadium.
How would you define, if you were tasked with doing so, how would you define a tide?
A tide? Well, a tide is when the water goes up and down with the moon, technically. I'm a scientist, so...
Well, those were very scientific terms. What do you mean when you say moon?
When it goes up and down. The gravitational pull of the moon makes the tides go in and out.
Okay.
And I mean, that's probably been measured longer than I can imagine, because, we've been using boats as civilizations for time immemorial,
When so many of these sites that we've seen, we saw a historical Fort Monroe.
Yes,
where
on the water.
There was right there on the water. We've seen, we saw a swamp today, right?
Yep.
And the water is,
Yep.
Right there, intermingled with everything that we were doing. How important are the tides on a day-to-day basis to this part of the world?
I have to imagine they're tracking, like it's been tracked again, like for hundreds, thousands of years, how to get in and out, when you can move your boats and go somewhere else. And we've got, unfortunately, a sea level rise problem here, so it's becoming a problem into the future of too much tide, too much water. And so we've got a lot of amazing scientists in this part of the world working on that and tracking that.
The logo for this team is a menacing,
A smirking
the second baseman
seahorse. Yeah.
Seahorses, I guess they're pretty mean. I guess they're threatening.
I guess. You wouldn't tell by looking at them. I had no idea until I moved here and started working at the zoo that they lived in the Chesapeake Bay. That they feel so tropical.
That's right.
But they're lined seahorses here in the Chesapeake Bay. It's a thriving ecosystem.
How about that? What do you know about the seahorse? Like, is that something you've come across in your naturalist
The thing,
interpretation?
of course, everybody knows is that the males carry the babies.
Yeah. Okay.
They have very strong father figures, and they carry the babies. The females put the eggs into the males, and then they do the hard work, which is not typical in the animal kingdom, which is very kind of them.
So if this is, assuming this is a male seahorse in the logo, it'd be great if he had like a little baby Bjorn.
It's so perfect. We should get on them about that.
We're going to talk to Brandios about that.
Father's Day at the Tides games.
Oh man, I hope that Joe Gregory, who we met earlier here tonight, Joe, I hope you're listening here. Father's Day, the Tides logo has a baby Bjorn.
That would be perfect.
This is going to be the best.
Father of the Year.
I can't
Triton,
believe this.
The sea turtle.
Dads get in free, and
Yeah, right?
the little seahorse character has a baby Bjorn.
Perfect.
All right. Well, Sarah, this has been, first of all, what a way to wrap up a work trip
Yeah.
at opening day for the Norfolk Tides. We haven't had our ice cream helmets yet, but we're gonna.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then tonight is fireworks because it's...
And it's opening night.
Yeah. What? Before I let you go, any impressions from opening night here in Norfolk?
I'm learning a lot. This is only my second Tides game. I probably could count on two hands how many baseball games I've been to in my life. So I'm learning a lot. I'm asking questions about countdown timers and things that I'm noticing that I've never noticed before.
The pitch clock. Well, the pitch clock is new, so that's...
Okay.
You're asking good questions.
Good.
Sarah, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for the conference and that you guys got to come and experience the area.
What a beautiful... My old stomping grounds of Virginia. So
It's a great place to have people.
it sure is great to be here. And I wish I could stay longer. I got to wake up at 3:15 to catch an Uber to the airport tomorrow.
Super fun. Super
Sarah,
fun.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers, in which my very good friend Dan Simon, designer extraordinaire, brings us a trivia question related to the team at hand. Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic, Paul. Thank you. How are you this morning?
Doing very well. So looking forward to recording this Studio Simon Stumper with you, and looking forward to our imminent minor league baseball and Major League Baseball road trip coming up in Georgia, just days away.
Yes, it is. Hey, so we're talking about Norfolk, the Norfolk Tides here.
Yeah.
Has your Baseball Palooza road trips with your buddies taken you to Norfolk yet?
No, I lived in Virginia for 10 years, never made it to the Norfolk Tides. It was before I really got, heavy into minor league baseball fandom. And we've never been there with Baseball Palooza because many of the guys on Baseball Palooza went to school at the University of Richmond. And so we want to see parts of the country that we've not seen before. So we've never gone back to Virginia for Baseball Palooza. However, as listeners of this episode will know, I was just earlier this season at the Norfolk Tides opening day. And that was really fun. And I got to meet Joe Gregory in person at the game. And it was a great way to kick off the minor league baseball season for me.
Well, given that Norfolk is the home of the world's largest naval station, appropriately named Naval Station Norfolk, I would imagine it's pretty Navy-centric when you go to that city, yes?
There's a heavy focus on like the ecology and marine life, and then yes, a very heavy focus on the military culture that exists there.
Okay, well, then I'll tell you what then, for our studio Simon Stumper today, we're going to keep it Navy themed. And our Stumper today asks, in which of these minor league baseball cities was the "Don't Give Up the Ship" battle flag made?
Ooh,
Are you familiar with the fact
yeah.
that rallying cry originated from well, you know what? We're going to talk in the answer to this. We'll get into some specifics about it. So, okay, so just to repeat myself, in which of these minor league baseball cities was the "Don't Give Up the Ship" battle flag made? Was it A, Bowie, Maryland, B, Erie, Pennsylvania, or C, Charleston, South Carolina?
It's not the city I thought of first when you asked that question. They do have the Maritime Museum in Erie, Pennsylvania. I believe that it's just picking at the back of my brain. I believe that Erie is the answer to that question. Those other two towns that you mentioned, those other two cities are on the ocean, whereas Erie, Pennsylvania is on the Great Lakes. I think the answer to that question is Erie, Pennsylvania, Dan. That's what jumped right to mind when you listed those cities.
See, this is the kind of response to a studio Simon Stumper I like, where there's something in your brain that is telling you this, and you're not certain, but you really feel like it's right. Like, I want you to have some chance as opposed to just a wild guess. I don't think you do this, but I'm sure you're familiar with it. Are you familiar with the Immaculate Grid?
Yes, I am familiar with that. That is, if listeners are not familiar, it is an online game where you have a 3x3 grid and you've got like categories across the top where there's a team or a stat or an award, and then you've got categories down the side, and then you've got to find a player who matches the categories across the top and across the bottom, and the more obscure, the better.
Okay. Do you do it?
No, I'm not good enough at like conjuring those names. The baseball. I'm not good enough at baseball, like obscure baseball trivia.
Okay. Well, what you just said, conjuring up those names, that's when I do the Immaculate Grid, there are times that I get, the particular square on the grid, like I just know it right away. It's kind of an easy one for me. And then there are other ones which are more difficult. And I have this kind of nagging, in a positive way, thought that this player, I think, played for this team, even though I don't really remember this player playing for that team, but somewhere in the deep recesses, there's that information exists. And there are times where there's the expression to pull something out of your behind, but
Hat.
they use a different, yeah, they use a different word. I'm fifth grade Will. I'm just trying to keep things funny here. I love when that happens when I'm doing the Immaculate Grid, and I love that it just happened with you because you are correct. That
good.
is the correct answer.
That was a lot of lead up to whether I got the question right or not. I was starting to sense that I got it right, but
well, I was just especially pleased this time the way you got it. So the flag was sewn by Erie, Pennsylvania seamstress Margaret Foster Stewart, along with her two daughters, three nieces, and a cousin. So apparently, back in the day, it was a major effort to make a flag.
probably a pretty big flag.
Yes, it was a very big flag. So for those who did not already know, or for those who didn't just do the research I did, "Don't Give Up the Ship" was famously uttered by U.S. Navy Captain James Lawrence as he lay dying aboard the USS Chesapeake after being mortally wounded in a battle with the British during the War of 1812. A very good friend of his, Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry,
Yeah.
later had his friend's rallying cry emblazoned on his signal flag as he headed into the Battle of Lake Erie during the War of 1812. Although I believe it took place in 1813. So even though it's called the War of 1812, it lasted longer than 1812.
It's like the New York Giants. They're not really in New York.
And in that particular battle, 9 U.S. naval vessels built in Erie shipyards defeated and captured 6 British Royal Navy vessels, ensuring American control of Lake Erie for the rest of the War of 1812. So he's a big deal. He being Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry, he's a big deal in Erie. I do a lot of work for the Erie Seawolves, and his name has come up a number of times, including with a current project I'm working on for them. So Oliver Hazard Perry.
He was discussed back in 2022. We had Chuck Johnson from the Maritime Museum in Erie on Baseball by Design talking about the Seawolves, and that name was an important factor at that museum. And I know that he was part of discussions that you had in some of the branding that you did for those Erie Seawolves. So, Dan, that was a good question. I liked that question. And as always, I appreciate you and your Studio Simon Stumpers. The next time we talk, Dan, we will have been on our road trip already. So it's we're going to be recording some segments live on our road trip. We're going to have an episode with you and Anna and Ranger Amy and me. But in the meantime, thank you for the Studio Simon Stumper. We'll see you soon at the ballpark. Have a great week.
And spoiler alert.
Oh, here we go.
There might be a live stumper from that road trip. There might be. There might not be. You'll all find out whenever.
That's what we call a cliffhanger right there.
Okay. I'll see you next week for
See you soon.
Stumpers and baseball.
See you soon.